theyeshiva.net.
So here we explore the core of the mistake, the great error of the spies, notwithstanding their lofty madrega, which has to be understood. And there he says, what was bothering them was not that they didn't have emunah, they didn't have bitachon, they didn't have, like you learn literally, they were simply troublemakers. No, on the contrary, they were madrega gavoya ma'oid, they were on a very high spiritual level, maybe higher than most people, which is why Moshe chose them. This explains how Moshe could make such poor judgment. I mean, if anybody knew the Jewish people, Isha Sheruach Boy, Moshe describes the definition of a leader. He asks about the new leader. It should be somebody Yifked Hashem Alekei Haruchos. So Rashi says that a leader can't have one spirit. He has to have the spirit of every individual. In other words, he has to be able to relate to every single person on his or her level. That's a unique capacity. There's no mitzvahs that a real leader excludes some souls from his soul. Like, this is the type I don't get along with. When you're not a leader, you can afford to do that. You say, it's not my type. He's just not my type. You know, he's a good guy maybe, but a leader, if he's an emes and a neshama klolis, so he's the klal of Knesset Yisrael. When you're the klal of Knesset Yisrael, there's no Jew that can be excluded from your space, from your neshama. So Moshe Rabbeinu, who asks for such a leader, obviously he had that. How can it be that there should be l'chayda such poor judgment and understanding the people? So this is the struggle of the question of what happened. So this is what the Balatanya suggests. Fakert. Moshe knew how special they were. He understood how deeply spiritual they were. Elamai, because of precisely that great spirituality, is what made such a mistake. Somebody who's not so ruchni is dik. So the gashmi is dikait of the new life doesn't bother him so much. But because of their spiritual sensitivity, they said Eretz Eicheles Yeshva, they don't want it all to be destroyed. So this means, according to this, somebody asked, and when you read the Chumash, the story, it says, where is this in the story? The story, it just says that everyone is hysterical, we're going to die, and that's just physical fear. But the emes is that, you could read the same story with different glasses. You could say the Meraglim was simply looking out for their skin. He says they were looking out for their skin, but which level of skin were they looking out? Sometimes people are afraid they're going to die physically, and sometimes people are afraid that they're going to die spiritually. And for them, a spiritual death is akin to a physical death. They're going to die mentally, they're going to die emotionally, they're going to die spiritually, and their whole reality is going to be transformed. So all the psukim also mean that. But depends what layer of death, what layer of destruction. Is it physical destruction? That our nashenu v'tapenu, our wives and our children, everybody's going to die? Or it means that basically the stress and the challenge and the lifestyle within the physical world, outside of the cocoon of the Shechina and Moshe and the clouds, will completely transform them. And yet he says it was a mistake, because as Yeshua and Kalev said, Toiva ha'aretz, ma'oid, not one time ma'oid, but ma'oid, that the infinity of Ein Sof, you're looking for Ein Sof, you're looking for dveikus with Hashem, the real dveikus, the real ma'oid, which is bli gvul, infinity, will only happen in the Eretz HaGashmis. Not Eretz Yisrael HaRuchnis, not the spiritual Yerushalayim, but the physical Yerushalayim, Eretz HaGashmis. Because of that, everything is a different perspective. By running away from Eretz Yisrael and staying in the Midbar, you're ultimately not reaching the Ma'oid. You're reaching great spiritual heights. But the Ma'oid, the Istalik, Yikara, the Kutchabrichu, B'chulu Almin, is only through a Skafis Achara. It's only by dealing with the Chayshach, and that's where the Medrash says, Nis'ava HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyas loy, where dira? Dafke b'tachtoinim, not b'elyoinim. They wanted elyoinim. They wanted to be in this world, but they wanted the spiritual Eretz Yisrael. But Nis'ava, the Taiva of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavayachal is that the dira should be b'tachtoinim. And he continues, Ki be'emes, the truth is, kol shu madrega hayoyse gavoya ma'oid. Counterintuitively, whatever is madrega hayoyse gavoya ma'oid, the higher something is, the loftier it is, and if it's yoyse gavoya ma'oid, mean excessively higher, misgala bedover hayoyse tachten dafka. It's expressed in the opposite extreme. It's expressed dafka in the lowest. B'yesese is much stronger than it could be expressed in higher things. Lamosh, mi bar seichel gadol. Take an incredible bar seichel. Bar seichel gadol doesn't mean an intelligent person. It means a brilliant person, a genius. She efsheloi legalus chachmasei la'makabel sichlei bedibur. He cannot reveal this level of wisdom to the recipient, to the student, bedibur, through words. There's no words to convey it. Kiyim beremez. Only through hints. The maisa dafka, which is actually maisa, not dibur. It's a gesture. It's a gaze of the eye. It's a movement in the body. Yachal legalas b'yeser eis could reveal much more. Keinya maimer azal. This is the depth of what the Chazal say. Dai la chakima biremiza. What does it mean? Literally, it means for the one who's intelligent, a remez is enough. You speak and speak and speak and speak. You're not going to get anywhere. But what the Baal Time says is something deeper. Only biremiza. Some things you can't convey in words. They're too profound for words. It's the remez. It's the remiza. It's the intimation. It's the gesture. It's that which is between the lines, not the lines. Bein Ashuris is much more. Somebody once asked a pianist, there was a pianist who once asked another pianist, a very famous pianist who played in Carnegie Hall. He says, why did you become world-renowned? He says, I play the piano, I think, as well as you. But me, nobody looks at me, you know. They take me for bar mitzvahs. And you're like the star of stars. He says, well, we both play notes. We both read the same note. We both play the note. He said, the difference between you and me is the pauses. The pauses between the notes. He says, that's the difference. The pause. The space. The silence. It's not the notes. It's what you don't. It's the silence. I wanted to open a yeshiva once in Varsha, in Warsaw. Before the war, there was a yeshiva called Ohr Chaim. It was named after Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik, Rabbi Chaim Brisker. The first Rosh Yeshiva was a son-in-law of Rabbi Chaim Brisker. I think his name was Rabbi Hirsch Glicksman. It's Rabbi Hirsch Glicksman. They wanted to hire a certain Rosh Yeshiva who was a Talmud of Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik. So they asked his son, the Brisker Rav, Rabbi Velvel Brisker, if they can hire him. He said, no, don't hire him. So he said, why not? Er sagt doch gut. He says good. He heard from your father. He says, yeah, weiß was zu sagen, aber weiß nicht was nicht zu sagen. It's a Soloveitchik line. He knows what to say, but he doesn't know what not to say. It's not a chachma to say. You have to know what not. In what you don't say goes in much more wisdom than in what you say. It's the pause. Daila chakima biremiza, only biremiza. The bein ashuris. From the Balatanya, it's also a very deep word. It says in Medrash, Mehechan karnu erpnei Moshe. In Parshas Kisisa, Moshe comes down a second time, and his face is so bright nobody could look at him. He has to put on a mask. So the Medrash says, what happened? Where did this happen from? So he says he was taking dictation from Hashem. So he had a pen, a quill, and he was writing the Sefer Torah. In the pen there was some extra ink that didn't go into the Sefer Torah. So Moshe smeared that ink on his face. So everybody asks, God l'chayda could estimate how much ink was needed. A person, you have extra ink. Yeah, you have extra ink. You could have estimated. Why was the extra ink? And why does Moshe put it on his face? The pshat is, there's that which you could write in a Sefer Torah. There is the ink that stays in the pen. It's what you didn't write. A real writer, as much work as he puts into writing, he puts into that which he doesn't write. What remains in the pen, what remains inside is much deeper than what comes out. Most recipients wouldn't know that. Wow, it's beautiful, it's extraordinary. But then there's something called between the lines. What was not said, can you figure out what was not said is much more than what was said. When there's real depth. When there's no real depth, then you just say everything, right? And when there's real depth, a lot of it you can't say. So how do you say it? You say it by not saying it.
What you don't say, when the Gemara says, Darshe Rishumas Omrim Eimai Galatori, says that's what Darshe Rishumas is. The ability to read between the lines and see what's the text deliberately.
Darshe Rishumas.
You're saying it by not saying it.
But not reading.
Yeah. Now it's a very deep idea. If it's not deep, you don't have to do this. But Daila Chakima B'Remizah means Daila Chakima. For the real Chacham who wants real Chachma, you can't always have words. It's a remez. It's a remez. It's a snap of a finger. It's a look of an eye. It's a gesture. Yeah, it says by Krishma, Lo Yirmaz Be'enov, Lo Yikritz Be'enov. What's Kritza? Kritza Be'enov is you, it's a blink. It's a blink. These are inyanim of remez. Remez is Maisa, and Dibur is more sophisticated than Maisa. Dibur is more spiritual. What's our remez? What's upside remez with your finger? But in that allows the revelation, the manifestation of deeper ideas that can't be structured in the world of Dibur. So here you have the paradox that which is much higher can only come down through that which is much lower, which will not contradict it. Dibur could only capture that which it is a keli for. That which it's too deep for containers, Dibur says, I'm sorry, I can't talk about this. So you have to take something completely inferior in order to convey that. We told us Yaakov Yosef brings from the Baal Shem Tov. Yismach, we say Shabbos morning. Yismach Moshe, but matnas chelka. At this point, people are usually hungry, so they don't always listen. Ki eved neman karasaloi. Klil tiferes b'roishai nasataloi b'amdil v'nechal arsin. Moshe rejoices with his gift. You have defined him as an eved neman. Actually, in this week's Parsha, B'chol Beisi Nemanu, he's a faithful servant. Klil tiferes b'roishai, a crown of beauty you placed on his head when he stood in Arsin. Ushnei luchas avonim heard biyada. Holdus Yaakov Yosef says from the Baal Shem Tov, his Rebbe, Yaakov Yosef from Pulna, the Rav of Pulna brings. What's the connection between the two? It seems Ki Eved Neman. So he says, interesting, very interesting word. Baal Shem Tov says, a king comes into his palace. He's dressed up with full splendor, of course, because he's coming from outside, from a speech or whatever. Now he goes into his room and he wants to what we would call chill out. You don't sit with your shmeina begadim and your crown a whole day. You can't. It's not a normal way. You get rid of it. You throw it away. You come home, right? You get rid of the tie. You get rid of the shoes. You get rid of the jacket. There's people who sit a whole night in their house on the couch with a tight tie. But those are unique individuals. And if you were zeicha to grow up in such a home, there's people. Okay, you come home. Well, what's that? It's a hefgewelt. It's a hefgewelt. When a mensch, yeah. Some of the German Jews, a mensch is a mensch. What, 11 o'clock at night? So they'll go to sleep also with a tie. They'll go to the shower with it, or whatever. It's a certain hagdara. The slippers are always matte. Yeah, the slippers are always even. It's a certain. It's a tipus. You have to respect it also. Americans don't understand it. Americans know McDonald's, but this is a mahalach. So the king comes home and he wants to relax. So he takes off his crown. Where does he put the crown? He has a nail in the wall. There's a nail, and he puts it on the nail. Fragda told us Yaakov Yosef, sepastach nicht. A crown which represents the gem of his royalty, and it's the cornerstone of his malchus. You're putting it on a nail? You call in the highest minister, the wise minister, and you put it on his head. You don't put it on a nail. Chandra says, no way. Because if you take the crown and you put it on the head of the minister, Evet Sheimeinin Azar is the melech. He's going to think he's the melech. The nail is never going to think that he's the melech. So the nail can get everything. The person, the minister, can't get everything. You can give him a certain position, can't give him the crown. A nail, you can give everything. Because the nail will never think that he's not a nail. He'll never think you put the crown on him because he's the king. He knows that he's the nail. Moshe Rabbeinu Eved Neman Karasalai. He was an Eved Neman. Klil Tiferes B'Roishai Nasatalai. He got the crown also. Shchina Medaberes B'Dachgreinu Shal Moshe Ish Moshe Anav Ma'id. Because Moshe saw himself completely as a conduit, as a nail, so to speak, therefore Moshe has everything. That's the B'china, the Rashbi, the Zohar says in Parshas Kisisa. So Pella de Zohar, Shalosh Pam Bashana Yira Kol Schurchas Pnei Hashem Alekecha B'Makam Asher Yivcher V'Lo Yiras Pnei Hashem Reikam. So the lashon is that 3 times a year you come to see Es Pnei Ha'Adoin Hashem. You come to see the face of the Master Hashem. So the Zohar says these words: Man Pnei Ha'Adoin Hashem. Who is the face of the Master? Dar Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So everybody says, Dar Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. How could you say this? This is Judaism. It's not another religion. It's not only in Zohar, which you can attribute to Kabbalah, it's a Yerushalmi. There's a Yerushalmi in Bikurim. It says the pasuk in Chavakah, V'Hashem beheichal kadshay. It's the Haftarah of Shavuos, second day. V'Hashem beheichal kadshay. Hashem is in His holy chamber. Says the Yerushalmi, Dar Rebbe Lezer b'Rebbe Yossi b'Beiknishta de Kesarim. This is Rebbe Lezer, the son of Rabbi Yossi, when he was sitting in his Beis Medrash in the city of Caesarea. When he's sitting, it's Hashem beheichal kadshay. So Talmud Yerushalmi, you're calling a Tana by the name of Hashem? This is unheard of in Judaism. The answer is, depends. If it's an Eved Neman Nasataloi, Rashbi says in Zohar, Anos Simona Ba'alma. I'm just a simon. I have no eye. My eye is just like a sign, a simon for God's eye. My eye is a conduit. Then, Man Pnei Adon Hashem Dar Rashbi, because Rashbi is not Rashbi. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, what do you see in Reb Shimon Bar Yochai? He's a conduit for the divine. Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yossi, it's not that he is Hashem. Einoid Mulvadoi, Chas v'Shalom, there's no duality, no shtei reshuyas. This is not the Father and the Son. This is Judaism, not Christianity. The pshat is that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Rebbe Lezer Rebbe Yossi, like Moshe Rabbeinu, their very identity was that there's no identity. They're one with the source. So when I look at you, what's the you? The you is divine because there's no you outside of the divine. Now this is true about everything in the world. But everything in the world, we block it. So I'm looking at you, I see you. When you look at you, you also see you. You don't see the divine because we have blockages. Somebody doesn't have blockages. The truth that everything is divine comes out through them, so there's no them. So that's the Khalil Deferes B'Reish Nasatala. So that's why words have prominence. Because they have prominence, they could convey only things that they could convey, that are be'erech to their identity. The tachtoin, in many ways, because it's devoid of sophistication, so it's like that nail, in a way, it could capture everything. So here he introduces it theologically in a fascinating way, that in this world, you can experience truth that you can't experience in any of the worlds. Not because it's a high world, because it's such a low world. It's like that nail. It's back to the mashal, another mashal that we spoke a few days ago, you remember? That the king invited everybody to come to the palace. And everybody went, but they got stuck. Either in the floor where there was food, or wine, or drinks, or jewelry, or art, or music, or wisdom. Because they were sophisticated, nobody made it to the king himself. The simpleton, the ani, he went straight lefnei Hashem. Why? Not because of his superiority, because of his inferiority. His lack of sophistication proved quite significant in the sense that he couldn't appreciate anything. Because he couldn't appreciate anything, he goes straight to the essence. So dafke in the place that's yoser tachten, in the lowest place, you can have the truth that comes out that you can't have in anywhere else. Because anywhere else, it manipulates it. Because it's sophisticated. Yeah.
Comes to mind something that I think is along the same lines. It says in the Chumash that Rivka, when she went to draw water,
Yeah.
she took a pitcher and put it over her shoulder.
The Kadon al Shichma.
It says there that Kad refers to the 20.
Chavdalet Svarim.
Yes. So when you look at the Sefer Torah, what's written there in black is much less than the white. So this refers to the Ohr Chaim of the knowledge. When Mashiach comes, everything is going to be revealed and realized.
Yeah. There's a Gemara. The Gemara says, "Kol ois she'ena mukefes gvil medalad ruchis." It's not kosher. In other words, every letter in the Sefer Torah has to be encircled by white parchment from all sides. If two letters are touching, it's not good. You need the gvil around it, the parchment around it. When you look at the gvil around it, there's nothing there. It's just white. It's white parchment. Megal HaMukah says, Yisrael is yesh shishim ribu oisis l'Torah. The word Yisrael means every Jew has a letter in the Torah. In other words, there are people who could look in a Torah and see a letter and see a Jew there. Or the other way around, they look at a Jew and they see the letter in the Torah. The question is, there are Jews that when you look at them, you don't see their ois in the Torah. You don't see that they have an ois in Torah. So on this, it's brought in Sifrei Chassidus that Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says in Menachos, it's a Peladic thing, that Rabbi Akiva went up to Har Sinai, he saw Hashem making the tagim on the Sefer Torah. Koshik, so he's making crowns on the letters. So he says, what's this for? Menachos Chavtes. He sees Hashem making, those what's called tagim. Tagim, little zayins. The Rambam calls them little zayins on the Sefer Torah. Shatnez gets 7 letters, have 3 lines on each of them. Shin ayin tes nun zayin gimel tzam. Frekt Moshe mima akev al yotcha. What is this for? Who needs these little decorations? Somebody's this is homework. It's a knas in yeshiva. What are you doing? So Hashem says it's not for you. So get zayin ayid Akiva ben Yosef. Many generations. Osid lidrosh al kol koitz v'koitz tilei tilim shal halachos. So Moshe says, I want to see him. So he shows him Back to the Future, whatever it is, and he puts him in the shir, and Rabbi Akiva is giving a shir, and Moshe doesn't understand what he's saying. Chol shadaita. He gets very upset. And the story continues. So it's a story, it's a loaded story. One of the interpretations is the Tagim represents the Jews that don't have an ois in the Torah. Rabbi Akiva, for 40 years, he never learned. He didn't have a ois in the Torah. Not only that, his parents weren't even Jewish. He was a Ben Geira. So he was disconnected. The Gemara says Rabbi Akiva told his student, K'shayisi ha'ma'aretz, when I was in Amaretz, I would say, Mi yitenli Talmid Chacham, ve'enashchenu kechamor. Bring me a Talmid Chacham, I'll bite him like a donkey. For the Gemara, why not like a dog? And for the Gemara, one breaks bones and one doesn't break bones. It's a different bite. You have to know, a dog bites and a donkey bites. It's a different bite. Ad kedei kach. So you might think that this Jew is disconnected from Torah. The answer is Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva rakes the tagim. Sometimes you're not connected to a letter, but you're still holding on a chut asayra, on a strand, on a string. That's the pchin of Rabbi Akiva, and it's 7 letters, shatnez gets, and each one has 3. So it's brought in Svarim, I think from the Sar Shalom of Bells, that 7 letters, and each one has 3, so it's 21. Those are the 21 days from Rosh Hashanah through Hoshana Rabbah, which are the days of Tshuva, when even the Jew doesn't have a letter in the Torah from Shavuos. That's before the Chet HaEgel, but after the Chet HaEgel comes Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Rabbi Akiva's Yartzeit is on Yom Kippur, or Erev Yom Kippur. Josephus brings what he was killed by the Romans. That's the pchin of Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef. Rabbi Akiva says in Pirkei Avos, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem, a man is precious because he was created in God's image. And then Rabbi Akiva says, Chavivin Yisrael Shenikru Banim Lamakim. Every person, Jew and non-Jew, is God's image. Chavivin Yisrael because they're children, and then Chavivin Yisrael because they have Torah. So I once heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, why Rabbi Akiva? He went through all 3 stages. Most Jews are born Jews into Torah. Rabbi Akiva knew what it means to be a human being not Jewish. Rabbi Akiva knew what it means to be Jewish without Torah. And Rabbi Akiva knew what it means to be a human being and Jewish with Torah. So he goes through, and all 3 are beloved. Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Rabbi Akiva knew what that means. A person is God's image, Jew or non-Jew alike. Then there's Chavivin Yisrael, then Chavivin. He went through all 3 stages, so he can appreciate the Tagim. That's the pchin of Yom Kippur. Then, Balatanya brings us something deeper. You have Jews, you'll hear Divrei Elokim Chaim now. You have Jews that have an ice in the Torah. You look at them, and you could see in their eyes, you could see a Sefer Torah. You have Jews, you look at them, you don't see an ice, but they're still connected with that little Zion, that little strand, that little Chut HaSayra. Yeah? They'll come Yisker to Shul. Yisker, they won't miss a Yisker. You know, there's Yidden, the Ad Mesiris Nefesh, they won't miss a Yisker. They won't miss a Yisker. Tell you some interessante anecdote in history. You see, interesting. Germany had one foreign minister who was Jewish. His name was Walter Rottenhau. An assimilated German Jew, very. His father was Emil Rottenhau, very assimilated German Jews, very. An anti-Israel, I mean, that Jews have a homeland. They were real German Shepherd Germans. Because in Germany, the Jews assimilated like nowhere else. They were more German than the Germans in those days. Today it's hard to understand, but then they were the gem of German culture, or part of the gem of that. And then, of course, they were spit out with a venom that was unprecedented. Rottenhau family represented this. And he became the first and last and ever foreign minister of Germany. And he was assassinated. In 1922 or 23, he was murdered. Walter Rottenhau. His father actually bought the patents of Thomas Edison. And he built one of the first electricity companies that the Germans took away. And then a Jew recently bought. I told the story once. Zandman, yeah. Felix Zandman. Anyway, but I want to say one thing. Rabbi YY Weinberg was the Sridei Eish. You heard of Rabbi YY Weinberg? He was a Gaon. He was a Slabodka Talmud. And he became the head of the Hildesheimer Rabbinic Seminary in Berlin. He was a brilliant man. His Levaya, Rabbi YY Weinberg, was a very interesting story. He was on the way to be buried in Israel, Tavshin Chavav, 1965, and he was supposed to be buried in one type of cemetery, and Talmidim of Slabodka took the Aron and they brought it somewhere else. It was an interesting ma'aseh. Rabbi YY Weinberg was a Gaon, and he was the Rav of a shul there. Now, Yekes are Yekes. There's no shtick over there. It was Yom Kippur once, and Walter Rottenhau pulls up in a car. The early 20s, pulls up in a car for Yisker to the shul. The Jews, the German Jews who davening in the Orthodox shul, even though it was German style, but they went crazy. They went crazy, and he was a very prominent person. He was a prominent politician. But when he left, the whole shul was, how do we allow this? Rabbi YY Weinberg stood up before Musaf, and he said, listen, he was Mechalel Yom Kippur. That's who he is. That's where he is today. But he did it to honor his father. In his mind, he was doing the mitzvah of Kibbud Av, saying Yisker. And that aspect do not take away from him. Emes, he doesn't know better. He grew up without Torah. So for him, driving Yom Kippur doesn't mean anything. But realized that he understood that you have to honor your father, and he came for Yisker. His own version of doing it, unfortunately. But don't take that away from him. Don't discredit it. Because in his mind, this was a very Jewish thing to do, and it was a Jewish thing to do, the aspect of Kibbud Av. And from this means that there's something in him that is very, very powerfully Jewish. Rabbi YY Weinberg says this. Parab before Musaf, everybody could relax. Rabbi YY Weinberg had a Talmud, his name is Rabbi Avram Grosbart. He lives in Eretz Yisrael. So he once, in Yerushalayim, he told this story once. Just a few years ago. He got up and he told this story. Rabbi YY Weinberg, finished this story and said, Rabbi YY Weinberg said, this family is something very powerful, and because of this Kibbud Av, I'm telling you, there's a spark here, and it's going to emerge. He finishes the story about his Rebbe, Rabbi YY Weinberg, that he experienced, he observed it. And somebody in the crowd gets up and says, Walter Rottenhau is my Zayda.
Wow.
And he's a Shema Torah mitzvah, living in Yerushalayim today. So you have the Jew, Ahaltzachon with a tag. He comes for Yisker. You can't underestimate it. Where's he a whole year? Okay, it's a good shaila. But don't dismiss that, don't destroy it. But now you have Jews, they don't come for Yisker either. Nish Yom Kippur, Nish Rosh Hashanah, and then you have three. What are they called? 3 days a year Jews.
Right.
2 days Rosh Hashanah, if even, or 1 day Yom Kippur. But then you have those who are completely disconnected. You look at them, there's no ice. And you look at them, they're not even connected to the tag. So you might think that they're disconnected. Here comes the third pchina. The third pchina is the white parchment. The white parchment in the Sefer Torah, when you look at it, you see nothing. So the Baal HaTanya brings, the white parchment conveys the diyosh and shtayr b'kol Monsey. The ink that remained in Moshe Rabbeinu's pen, that did not come out, that's in the white parchment. That's the Dailach Hakima B'Remizah. When you look at the white parchment, you see nothing, and some people see everything. It's so deep, it's so subconscious, it can't come out in the consciousness because it's too powerful. Our brain, our conscious brain, filters all information that comes into our conscious self, but only the information that it knows you can deal with. The information that is too profound, it says, let's keep this out for now. Because when it comes out, it's going to be too powerful. Where does that come out? It comes out in blank steers. It comes out in white parchment. It comes out in remozim. I once asked a psychiatrist, he was a brilliant person, and I saw he did tremendous things with people. I said, how do you figure it out? The people don't even know what's bothering them. They say one story, they talk about their mother, they mean their shviga, they talk about their shviga, they mean their wife. People know what's bothering them, they're confused. He says, you think I listen to their words? He tells me, my work is 1% what they're saying. 99% of their bodily movements. 99% of their bodily movements. I don't care if they don't say anything. The position in the chair, his hands, his arms, the twitches. Right now, somebody's sitting and shaking his foot under the table. I don't know why. But somebody's sitting and shaking his foot under the table. You don't have to raise your hand, it's fine. Right? You don't have to raise your hand. Okay. What? That brings out much more. You'll speak and speak and speak. You'll tell stories about your wife and your mother and your father and yourself and your childhood and the Rebbe and the Kehillah and the this and all the good things that happen in the mikveh, whatever. That pales in comparison to what you don't say, and your feet. Your feet are saying, your eyes are saying, your twitch is saying, your finger is saying. Why? Why? Words are words. No. The real stuff come out only b'remizah. They can't come out through words. The words will not get them. They're too deep. That's the diyosh and shtayr b'kol Monsey. That's the klaf. Those Jews are also connected in a positive way to the deepest places. But it's very deep. It comes out in the parchment. So Shavuos is the Yom Tov of Oisius. Yom Kippur, Tshuva, is the Yom Tov of Tagim. And then you have Simchas Torah. What's Simchas Torah? Simchas Torah, you want to celebrate Torah. How do you celebrate Torah? Open up a Sefer Torah and start reading, learning. No! You dance with the parchment of the Sefer Torah. You dance with the gvil of the Sefer Torah. Fakert, you can't even read it. The Sefer Torah b'hakafos is sealed up. You can't even learn it. Who celebrates a book that way? Imagine our Senate or Congress, Capitol Hill, would make a yearly celebration for the Constitution. Or better, the British Parliament, Pasta Bisselmer. The British Parliament would make a yearly celebration of their Constitution. So you would have all the Parliament members and all the lords, dancing. Or lawyers would take their law books, right, and dance after the bar. Or doctors in the hospital would take their medical texts and start dancing. You'll never trust them again. You say they should all be institutionalized. And that's what Jews do. They take their books of laws, and everybody thinks it's normal.
I think they use Apostle Sefer Torah also.
Even Apostle Sefer Torah, that's the point. What is it? It's dancing with the gvil. Mukaf oisius. It's around. It's the Ohr Makif. And that's why you do hakafos. Hakafos is the pchin of Ohr Makif. Ohr Makif is the Ohr that can't come into the ice. It surrounds the ice in the gvil. That's the pchin he's talking about here. So the ultimate Ein Sof comes out where? In the Tachtonim. So that means that the truth of God in His essence comes out dafke. That's why Nisavali is Leidira b'Tachtonim. Anywhere else there can't be a dira. there could be revelations. There's a difference between a dira and other places that we are. For example, everybody goes to work, or one day, Mirza Hashem. Work, your office is not your house. What's the difference? To go to your office, you need a reason why you're in the office, to make a living. There's a uniform in the office. There's a certain persona that you display in the office. There's a certain persona that you display when you're sitting on an airplane, when you're sitting in a restaurant. Where is the place where you don't display persona? Hopefully, in the house. Sadly, if you're displaying a persona in the house, it's not a house, it's a prison. Or to put it simply, in terms of common reality, it's the only place where you could be without clothes, justifiably. You take off your clothes in the office, not going to be so geschmack. Or on an airplane, they'll probably do an emergency landing. In your house, I mean, the Mekaymas Hamutarim, yeah? And if I'll ask you, why are you going home? You don't need a reason. What do they say? The definition of home is, you don't need a reason to be there. And you don't need a justification to be there. If a child feels that he needs a reason and a justification to be yours, right? That you're dealing with a difficult situation. A house is your place. Dira b'tachtoinem means the house, in other words, where you are literally without clothes, naked, is dafke b'tachtoinem. Everywhere in the world, the Balatanya says somewhere else, everywhere in the world he's with levushim. Where is he without levushim? In this world. This world is the darkest world. That's the word. Because of that, it could convey the ultimate. That's the dira, a home. A home, who bevigda, he bevigda, yotze b'yitingsu.
Why that's what it says Hashem Eichel Kodshay.
Huh?
Hashem Eichel Kodshay for a blizzard.
Yeah. Beknishta de Kesar. Beknishta Kesar.
Why the ink on the face?
So this was the word that Moshe Rabbeinu knew that there's a oir in the Sefer Torah that he can't put into the Isis, but he put it into the Jew. He put it into himself. Shanu Chacham b'Lashon HaMishnah Baruch Shabachar Bahem u'b'Mishnasam. There's the B'chira b'Mishnasam and there's the B'chira Baruch Shabachar Bahem. Now another few moments. Oid Marshal, another interesting Marshal. The first marshal was also some marshal, but it's an oid marshal. Michoisum shel even toiv bahir. If you have a seal of an even toiv bahir, an even toiv is a diamond, and it's bahir. It's a dazzlingly brilliant diamond in terms of luminescence. Shaydei behirusei einam nikarim ha'osis bahir. If you look at it, you will not see the letters in it because it's too brilliant. Its light is too powerful. Only when you imprint it, you sign it, the signature is in wax, for example, suddenly you see all the oasis. Now you can't compare wax to the diamond. The diamond's price is maybe $50 million, the best diamond in the world, the greatest diamond in the world. And the wax is wax, you get it from a beehive. 35 cents, 45 cents. But because of the light, you don't see the Isis. In the Shaiva, suddenly you could see the Isis. So here's another mashal. Why does he need two mashalim? Obviously, every mashal is trying to convey a different nikud. It's not I'm saying it's oid mashal. Every mashal is conveying a different idea. The first mashal is conveying, you have to understand this, but the first mashal is conveying the idea that the highest truths could only come out, birimizim, maisa, they can't come out through dibur. So there's the atzmius of Elikus can only come out in Tachtoinim, in Gashmis. The second marshal is conveying that the oasis you'll never see in the Even Tov. They'll be lost in the light, and they'll only come out in the Shaiva. In the wax, it will come out. Where in the source, some things remain fakir, dafka eclipsed because it's so light. And dafka here, there's something that can come out that even in the Elyonim can't come out. V'zeu shekasuv, uri'isim oisers chartem is called mitzvahs Hashem. So he teaches, only here can you see. You'll see the tzitzis and you'll remember the mitzvahs. Shaydei ma'aser shubchinas istaklus b'lamed beis chutin agashmi. It's only through the action of looking, physical looking, at 32 physical strands, Yavoi mizelu schartem is called mitzvahs Hashem. It's a paradigmatic thing. You want to remember the mitzvahs Hashem, think about mitzvahs Hashem. No. You have to look at physical tzitzis, very physical and physical strands. Lamed beis chutim, because it's 8 and 8 and 8 and 8, so it's altogether 32. You look at the physical histaklus, or it's like the wax. There you could see everything that you can't see when you look at the ruchnis. It's called mitzvahs Hashem, which l'chayr is counterintuitive. So he says, "L'fisha talus ubchinas er makif." Talus represents an encompassing light. V'atzitzis shein lamed beis chutim b'chinas lamed beis nesivas hachachma shenim shachem aydei er makif. And then you have the 32 pathways of wisdom that come from the talus out. It's brought in Sefer Yitzirah that there's 50 portals into Bina and there's 32 pathways into Chachma. So the Ohr Makif, which is the talus, is channeled in 32 pathways, which are the 32 pathways of Chachma. They're called Lamed Beis Nesivas Chachma. And then there's Chamishim Shari Bina, 50 portals of wisdom. Famous Gemara in Shoshan that Moshe only got 49 till the end of his life. So he says the tzitzis are the lamed beis chutin. So now we come back to the beginning of the Maimer that are raisa mechachma nafkas. Mitzvahs, a Torah comes from chachma, and each of the mitzvahs an aver the malka. It's a limb that brings out the brain. The brain is expressed in every organ in its own way. So the tzitzis are the lamed beis nesivus of chachma, which come from the talus, which is the Ohr Makif, the infinite light. Which is why if you minig Ashkenazim, you put on a talus only after the wedding. Why don't we put on a talus by bar mitzvah? So the Svardim do, but the Ashkenazim mostly put on after the wedding a talus. And the answer is because the real Ohr Makif you can only get after your wedding. After you create a relationship with somebody different than you, you can reach the Ohr which transcends you. So the talus you only put on after the wedding, according to the minig Ashkenazim. I guess the Svardim could reach an Ohr Makif even earlier, because Svardim are Svardim. So therefore, the only way you can access that out of the talus, you need pashat the maisa, the physical string. What's a physical string? What's this? But in this gets contained something that you can't contain in dibur and in chachma and in spiritual meditation and so forth. Notwithstanding their greatness, heipach machshavas hameraglim. This is punkt the opposite of how the meraglim understood. They said fakert. Tzitzis, where are you destroying yourself? What are you taking Judaism and putting it into a physical setting? That's the end of everything. Keep it in the midbar, let it remain in the world of midbar, the world of dveikas, the world of machshava, the world of dibur at best, and basically the inner world, not the outer world. The inner world, that's where the action is. And this you can't be bevatel. This is a machshava, it's a chashava, it's a machshava from tzaddikim, from big people. Because there's a truth to it. In other words, you can't come to the truth of this maimer if you don't first go through the truth of the meragla. If you right away jump and you say, oh, Gashmis is higher than Ruchnis, you missed the point. You first have to go through if not, there wouldn't be a story in Torah. The story in Torah is you first have to go through the story of the meragla. You have to understand the story. And then you have to say, Toiva Aretz Moed Moed, because if not, you're missing touch. You first have to understand the Yerida of Gashmis, and then from the Yerida of Gashmis, you can understand the Aliyah of Gashmis. Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom Hayim Ebchinas Dur Deya. He was from the generation called Dur Deya, the generation of perception. This Dur he calls Dur Deya from the Medrash, the Dur that had Das. All other Duras afterwards are basically like parrots, like monkeys copying. But their Dur was Dur Deya. They were originals. They were not copycatters. They were originals. That's why they didn't accept anything easily. By us, it's like, yeah. You just repeat. They didn't repeat. They created the story. And he was in a huge madrega. Even Moshe couldn't come to Eretz Yisrael. In other words, there's something in Eretz Yisrael that is higher than Dur Deya and higher than Moshe. And yet he prays 550 times to come to Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, you need Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael needs you. The answer is because the ultimate kavanah is to be able to go into the physical land. But tachlis habri, it's the ultimate bri kenisker leil. Va'afal became loizacha. It's taka the tachlis, and despite his greatness, this he didn't reach. For Yeshua dafka machnis. This was dafka the union of Yeshua who could take Jews into Eretz Yisrael. So this represents the Torah Samaraglim, that they tained heaven is greater than earth, ultimately. And if you could create heaven and earth, you reach the purpose. And Yeshua and Kalev said, no, heaven is taka greater than earth, no question. But Toiva ha'aretz ma'id ma'id, the truth of Ein Sof, you can only reach Dafke in Eretz, because Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu liyis lo dira b'tachtoinim, and therefore it's not the disengagement from the world that is the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose is to engage the world, to engage the darkness, to engage the world within you, to engage the world around you, and to transform the very landscape that is the greatest stira telekos, to transform that. Now this debate, I'll just say this, and finish with this. It needs a bigger arichas, and the next line will continue this. But this debate of the Meraglim and Yeshua and Kalev is a debate that continues throughout Jewish history. Maybe not this model of it, but the concept continues throughout Jewish history. How do we look at the world? How do we look at Yiddishkeit? Do we look at the tachlis of Yiddishkeit is segregation, precious, to disengage as much as possible, and that's the ultimate definition of holiness? Or fakert, nisava kadosh baruch hu liyis lo dira b'tachtoinim, to transform the world. Within yourself, you could look at it in two ways. Is the kavanah in yourself to find your ruchnius and to escape all other parts of your personality? Or no, then you're missing the purpose. The ultimate purpose is to be able to show up with all aspects of the self, like we spoke, liyis lo dira b'tachtoinim, in the person himself. That the most tachten element of the person becomes not only part of Avodas Hashem, it becomes the key purpose of his Avodas Hashem. This perspective changes a lot of ideas in how you understand Yiddishkeit, especially its relationship with struggle, with stress, with physicality, with the universe, and with many other areas. So Shabbos we have the regular shiurim, and the Mitzvah Hashem Sunday morning as well. We'll have the shiur, and then we'll resume this one on Monday morning, Be'ezer Hashem. Have a good Shabbos, everybody. Shabbos Tova, Freilich and Shabbos, a Freilich and Erev Shabbos. Far Shabbos is Erev Shabbos. Eicha ganze Avoide. You want to start L'chun Eranan or noch? Can you machen L'chun Eranan? Yeah, it's a good question. You want to know the difference. I'll tell you, it's a whole sugya. What is the difference between the two metaphors in Likkutei Torah? I just touched on it very briefly. It seems to me, although I'm not sure, that the two mashalim of the Alter Rebbe represent completely two different ideas. The first mashal brings out that whatever is higher could only be revealed in a much lower place. The deepest truth comes out dafka in the lowest place. The higher places disturb it. They impose their character on it. Because they impose their character on it, they filter it through their own vessels. And therefore it's not the pure truth. Like I said before, the nail remains loyal to the crown. There's no ego that gets involved. The Baal Shem Tov's mashal, tefillah la'ani chiyatav. The remez, the physical gesture, could contain the full truth, with not diluting it. The truth of Ein Sof comes out in Gashmis. Wow, one word. Then there's another word. You have an Evan boy, a diamond, a dazzlingly brilliant diamond. It has oisius in it. The oisius can't be seen within the light. The light is too powerful, too vigorous. It eclipses the letters. Dafka in the wax, in the shaiva, the letters come out. I think he's talking about a whole other inyan. Ohr Ein Sof has within it oisius. What are oisius? Oisius is the capacity of Hashem to express himself in a finite way. But those finite oisius are completely submerged in the infinite light. Where does the koyach hagvul of Hashem, his capacity to be finite, where does it come out? It comes out in our world. It comes out, and dafka in the lowest world. In the lowest world, with this complete finiteness and darkness and divisiveness and fragmentation, here you see the profundity of the finiteness of the infinity. It's a whole different word. This also comes out Afkin Techtein. It could be this is a difference between the two Mashalim. One is speaking about the Ein Sof itself. One is speaking about the Koyach HaGvul in the Ein Sof, which can only come out in this world. Where in all the higher worlds, which are all in one way or another spiritual, they eclipse the power of the Isis. Okay, but this still needs more iyun. I'm not sure about this. I have to look up more sources. Be'ezra Hashem will discuss this concept in the future as well. And this is just something I'm thinking, perhaps. There's different Svarim and Chassidus that talk about it in Ayim Beis. There's a lot of sugyas about this. This still needs a lot of exploration.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.